Hello, hello. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Chuck Tuck, and I am the host of Behind the Story of. And today's story is of an adult nature. So if you are offended easily, if you don't want to hear anything about sex, and more specifically BDSM and kink, this may not be the podcast for you. But just to forewarn you, or be rest assured, this is nothing kinky. This is nothing overly sexual or anything like that. We're going to find out from first time filmmaker Todd Casey, also known as Max. And he's going to talk to us about what BDSM is and what kink is. What if is there a difference between the two? But his documentary actually follows four real life people, and they're really different in their backgrounds. We have one who is an American soccer mom, another who is a British dominatrix, and then we have another Robin, who is a good old Texan boy. And then we have January, and January is a special person. January really helps people bring out their inner self, because a lot of us have a lot of inner power that we just don't know how to release. But anyhow, this podcast is really about the film, which has been released in 2023. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get right into this conversation. Oh, and by the way, the documentary film is called tOuchKink.
I love to explore different worlds, different people, different things. And it became very clear very early that the camera was going to be my passport to do so. From that point, I'd always worked in film industry in various kinds and various jobs. I shot corporate videos. I had a post-production company. Then I ended up selling that and went to Europe, shot ton of stuff there, traveled all over the world, did a bunch of travel photography, travel work for Intrepid, which was fun. So I had to travel, getting to actually film something, be in the room and travel was always the holy grail for me. And then about 8 years ago, I was in Budapest, and one of the conversations that I struck up was the dominatrix by the name of January Seraph. And, first time I ever met anybody who, was a dominatrix. So, of course, I was very curious. So I asked her about her life and what she did and what it was all about. And I quickly realized that we had more in common than I realized. I didn't really understand what it was to be a dominant or a submissive or all these kinds of things. But I'd always been the kind of person just to do what I want, go where I want, and figure it out. And I was always surprised not everyone did that. Like, I want to go, I go. I have always been very like that. I didn't know that was a thing. It's like a kind of person that's like that, and that's more unusual. So I realized there's like a lot of parallels. Then I realized a lot of things that I enjoyed personally were also in that category of BDSM, and I don't think I really kind of thought of it that way. And then I started getting to know her more and more, and we talked, and she was very keen on doing a documentary to sort of explain the difference between abuse and consensual kink. A lot of people kind of marginalize anybody in the community because they kind of think, oh, that's kinky, that's weird shit. Much like, it wasn't 30, 40 years ago where if you were gay, that was weird shit, oh my goodness, that person's gay, now I think the moniker kink has sort of replaced that now. Oh, they're kinky. Oh, no wonder they're doing crazy shit. It's nothing to do with what you do or who you are. It's how you do it. You could be a crazy used car salesman. And there's probably a lot of those, actually. Anyway, she offered to, actually at the beginning, she offered to finance the whole thing. But I also realized that she was bipolar and wasn't really cool with, taking advantage of somebody when they're kind of like, oh, I'm so excited, She made a lot of money as a jet set dominatrix and all the rest of it. But, I still valued her friendship and didn't really think much more of it other than sort of put it in the back of my mind. But about 8 months later, I got a call from a company that wanted to market this app, and they wanted me to do videos and promotional stuff, and it was a dating app for kinky people. And I looked at the app and I thought, well, I was honest with them. I said, look, this app is not very good. And they were kind of shocked that I said that. And I said, look, here's what you should do, this, and the other thing. But, I don't think you get this at all. I mean, I didn't even know as much as I know now, but I knew enough then to know that they were way off base even then. Now I look back and go, they weren't even 1% of the way there when they decided to launch. So I managed to convince them. I said, look, I'm happy to go out there and ask people to try your app if you're supporting my documentary. And I can be just really honest with people. Say, look, I'm here with XYZ. The company's name was Whippler. They're sponsoring the Montreal Fetish Weekend, and they're sponsoring my documentary, and I'd like to film you for the documentary. And then it was the events were happy because I got some money from the big brand from them. The community was more happy because I think they understood that my intentions were good to sort of portray them in an interesting light and to try to bridge that gap between kinky and non-kinky folk.
Couple of real quick questions right off the bat. So, is kink different from BDSM, and or does BDSM fall under an umbrella of kink? That would be one. And in your research and doing the filming, putting this documentary together, since you met January, is in Europe, did you find that Europeans are more accepting of this type of culture? I'm not going to use the word behavior, but culture.
To your first question about the first thing I like to say, and the first thing I learned is how little I know about anything, because everyone likes to define things differently, and that's their different route. The way I define it is kink, it would be the umbrella category, and there's two main subcategories underneath that, which is BDSM, bondage, dominance, sadomasochism, and then in the middle sometimes people go DS is in dominance, submission as well. And that's sort of the old sort of guard, which often, for many people, has nothing to do with sex. It's purely to do with experiences of feeling a certain way, of being a certain role. A lot of BDSM relationships are not sexual. Some are, some aren't. But it just because you see 12 couples and they're all getting spanked and they even all look the same, I can pretty much guarantee all those 12 people that look like they're doing exactly the same thing are having completely different experiences. One's feeling strong, maybe one's feeling weak, one's feeling cathartic. I mean, the top is thinking this. I mean, you can't know what's going on in people's heads. The same action has different feelings to people, brings out different things. So it's quite an enigma. And then on the other side of BDSM is fetishism, which is related, but fetishism is really just somebody likes a particular thing. Foot fetishes are probably the most common. The interesting thing about the concept of kink, at least from my research, is that it's self-cannibalizing in the sense that for it to be kinky, it has to be a minority. Therefore, you could argue that, I don't know, having sex with the lights off now is probably kinky. If most people do it with the lights on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The wearing a Victorian bathing suit would certainly be kinky now because that's an unusual thing that no one does. Everyone wears a bikini, but to Victorians, of course, the bikini would be kinky. So it sort of cannibalizes, and you think about all the research that I've seen say something. Pretty much over 50% of people now have tried a little bit of light bondage, a little bit of spanking. So it could be argued that those things are no longer kinky.
Right. I guess I could. I mean, go as far as saying that if you want male, female, penile penetration into vagina, missionary, that could be kink because maybe that's not the normalization or now.
Exactly. It's a funny term, but so under the umbrella of kink is basically generally thought of as anybody doing something that may or may not, and often is not, outside of the norm. And then the BDSM is more of a traditional sort of bringing it down to those four subcategories, and it has traditions within those traditions. The other side, fetishism, and sometimes the folks in BDSM and the folks in the fetish side of things don't necessarily get along because a lot of people, they just want to go to an event and wear latex. They want to go to an event and dress up a certain way. For them, it's a fetish, something that they like. where some of the more traditional BDSM people would say, well, and fetishism is generally more sexual. It's more like, I want to shag while you're wearing those latex clothes, or, it's more orgasm usually is a bigger part of that in my experience than it is in the traditional BDSM field.
Okay.
I think that was the answer to your first question. I can't remember the second.
Did you find that Europeans are more accepting of this culture than in North America?
Oh, absolutely. My director of photography was Dutch, and he wouldn't have described himself as kinky. And obviously, he was with me for we filmed for like 90 days over a few years. He said, "This isn't to him. This wasn't kinky. This was just normal stuff. I mean, he's Dutch. It's just yeah, some people like that, and like they didn't. The Dutch don't seem to draw a line so strictly between this is kinky and that's not. They just say it's just sex. The only thing is sometimes I see is more hard. That was all he would say. Sometimes, like if they're spanking or they're doing something a little bit, he'd go, "That's very hard." He wouldn't say it was kinky. Just that's little hard. I think that was it. That was the whole thing. The last thing I saw in Scandinavia right now, it runs around 42-43% of people actually consider themselves kinky or curious. The latest numbers in North America are around 28 to 33%, depending on what report you're reading. Um, so yeah, I think in the Europeans generally have a healthier attitude towards this stuff anyway. There's more nudity. There's more of these discussions. If you're in Denmark, there's nudity on daytime TV and the kids can watch that. But the moment there's something violent, mom will come over and cover the kids' eyes. It's like they have a different priority in what they. In America, it's like perfectly fine to watch 100 guys get their head blown off with a shotgun, but God forbid you see a pair of nipples because apparently that's going to mess you up. Where Europeans have the opposite attitude. So in general, I think their attitude is a little bit more open and healthy with regard to these things.
I'm glad you said healthy because I do agree with you on that. We cover our kids' eyes, or we have groups out there saying, no, you shouldn't watch this, violence, or violence is all okay. Hey, that's fine.
Mm.
Sure. And let's have it all over the news. Let's have it in the movie theaters. Let's have it on television. But like I said, God forbid there's a nipple. That's not good. So it's, yeah, definitely backwards.
I remember living in Europe during the whole Janet Jackson nipple slip thing on the
Oh,
Super Bowl, and all the Europeans were thought that was a joke. Is this like an April Fool's kind of joke? Are you making like no one's actually seriously got a problem with this, right? And I had to explain to them, no, actually, there really were people that actually have problems with this stuff. It is kind of amazing. But I was thinking this morning how sad it is that humans generally remember the bad stuff. It's more, it grabs us
uh,
far. Like if it bleeds, it leads. If it's like someone gives you an insult, you might remember it for the rest of your life. But if someone says you look good today, you'll probably forget it by tomorrow. There's something about violence or those aggression that unfortunately captures people's attention for better or for worse. And I think that's why America's the land of entertainment. They want to capture people's eyeballs, and somebody figured that lesson out fairly early, unfortunately. And, that's why it is the way it is in my mind.
yeah. And once again, you're spot on that. You hear a lot of people who go to uh, funerals or celebration of life, and then it's like, hey, I haven't seen you in 20 years. Oh, it's so great to see you. Somebody dies, we get together. Something happens in the news, we glamorize it for lack of terminology for me. But you see other cultures, other places, it's an every. I don't want to say and make it light of things, but it's an everyday occurrence. So they don't dramatize it and they don't make it into a special occasion as we do. I think in the States where we make a lot of things into a special occasion. Um, but aside from all that, your film, Touch Kink. So, uh, why did you make this film? Was it to highlight January's life, or is it the culture, or did you want to pay homage? What was it about this film that really made you make this documentary film?
I'd be lying to say that I decided I wanted to do something from the beginning. The truth was, it sounded like an interesting story, kind of like I'm going to go visit XYZ country. I don't know what I'm going to find, but I'm a traveler, and I've learned that nothing makes me happier than sort of dropping into a situation that's slightly uncomfortable. That's a little bit more like what to figure this stuff out. So I started on the journey. The beginning of it was to sort of dispelling the myths around BDSM. Like, I was like, that was the first question I always asked people. What is the biggest misunderstanding around BDSM? But then as the journey progressed, and I met so many amazing people that shared so many amazing stories, it started becoming almost like a evangelical, slightly evangelical thing for me, in the sense that I kind of think that kinky people deserve, if you're consensually kink and you've educated yourself on how to do it, I think they deserve a superiority complex, because it is a better way forward. To tell people just don't do, like, the old sex ed stuff was just don't do it, you'll die. That was really not very nuanced and not very useful. you know, Even and the me as important as the Me Too movement was, I think there's a whole generation of men now that are like afraid to, slap a girl on the bum, and they should be, unless of course they have a conversation. Hey, my name is, what do you like, what do I like? I like spanking. Have you ever heard of, oh, you like, that? Okay. So could I get consent? Maybe, like, maybe we could, like, I could spank you on the bottom sometime under this situation. Oh, you actually like to be spanked from time to time? Great. So, and if it doesn't go so well and you decide you don't want me to start spanking anymore, you'll just say red or stop or whatever the hell you want to say, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Okay. Spank, have a good time. It's not that you can't do these things. You can do anything you want. There's nothing politically correct, as Esther Perel says in her book Mating in Captivity. There's nothing politically correct about the erotic mind, and nor should there be. I think her quote was something along the lines, you may be protesting against something like maybe equal rights, and then in the bedroom it's like, let's do master and servant. It's
I,
like, there's nothing wrong with that if it's consensual. So a lot of people, I think, especially a lot of guys that they don't know how to behave. They don't know what to do. How are you supposed to treat? Oh, I can't do this, because before they were taught, oh, maybe be a bit aggressive and you might get the girl. Or, half the stuff that's been canceled now, like Pepe Le Pew has been canceled, which I think, when you look at it, actually, it makes a lot of sense. Here's this aggressive guy that won't give up. We're aggressive. We call it stalking now, but back then it was kind of cute. So it's like the new, so what's the next thing? What can we teach people? They can't, just say no isn't going to work. Just, try and don't offend anybody all the time is not going to work. How about this new model that kinky people have been using for a long time? Have a thorough, honest conversation, discuss what you want to do, gain consent for that activity, do that activity, and then make sure it was cool for that person. And if it was, maybe start that whole circle again. I think it's something that isn't that little bit of knowledge, that little bit of process that emanates from the kink community is literally and should literally be the kind of stuff that we talk about in all relationships.
um, you know, I think we'd have to reset the clock and start all over, because I think the culture here I'm just going to say in the North America, maybe mainly men, and you kind of pointed this out, we don't know how to behave, because we were never taught, we were never shown. Everything was a no, 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 or it was you got to be masculine if you want to get that woman. But then also, I think on the flip side, maybe a small minority is, if there is a consent, hopefully is a verbal consent, then somebody changes their mind afterwards. And I think there's a lot of that fear too, or perhaps that has happened. So it's almost like we need to start today and teach, whether that's at home or in school, to build up to this part where it's okay, but you ask and you get your consent, and like you said, there's that code word. Red means stop. It doesn't mean more, and it doesn't mean do I question what he or she is saying. Does that mean they want more? No. Red was the code word. That's it. But We just don't understand that here in North America. Problem.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, now, this is if I get to make another movie, I'd love to make it, but I'm getting so many comments from guys now and talking about, oh, all this negotiation seems like such a pain in the butt. I mean, I just want to get laid. I just want this. You know, they have this idea that they want X, they want whatever they want, and they approach somebody, maybe they don't get that, they walk away. And what I'm trying to explain to them is actually, if you have a conversation with someone and it's going and you're not getting X, why not ask them what they like? You know, what are they interested in? A, B, C. You might find out that there's things that A, you didn't even know existed. B, things that you'd really like to do as well, but you thought because X was off the table, that was off the table, and it wasn't. So not only is all these conversations not a waste of time, you may not get X, but you may get A, B, C through everything else. And hell, you know, things go well, you might get X too.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just having not just kind of being so focused in on one, whatever that activity you're looking for, usually, you know, hide the sausage. Not be so focused on the one thing and just be open to other things. And you might discover so many wonderful things.
Yeah.
You know, that's, to me, kinky is almost like, it's almost like a scientific approach to being naughty.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to say our North American continent here in America, we look at X as that happy ending. So, majority of the guys, that's what they're looking for. They don't know that there's more or there's less and more. It doesn't just mean your happy ending, your climax, your orgasm. It could be other things that are going to excite you or turn you on. It doesn't always have to be that happy ending. So, on your film, you highlight, is it seven main people that you have interviewed?
There was
Or is
mainly
it
four
four?
main
Okay.
stories, and then some smaller sort of, the main characters were January, Emily, Robin, and Mistress Precious. And then a lot of people shared other details and stuff. But, the overarching story for me, at least, was sort of trying to lay out this process again of like negotiation, consent, play, and aftercare. And if anyone hopefully hopefully it's entertaining enough that they'll learn a few things, but the most important thing I want them to remember is just not we're not all the same, quelle surprise. And negotiation has value, consent has even more. And little aftercare, and then you can somebody says in the film how heterosexual, normal, classical, whatever sex is like one dot on this little spectrum of all the things that are possible.
Now, did you find that women were more open to uh, having this discussion than men?
Yeah, I think they definitely are. I think somebody, I wish I could remember who said it to me, but somebody who had some psychological, was a therapist of one kind. It's just generally men have a much more limited spectrum of emotions. Generally, in the Western world, you're allowed to sort of be pissed off, slightly proud of yourself. I think that's it. You're not really supposed to be melancholy. You're not supposed to be too emotional. You're not even supposed to be that excited. Like proud of yourself is one thing, but you don't dance around like a fool. That would be like a fool. So we have a much more narrow kind of concept of what we're allowed to feel, which kind of limits our way to process things. And then you add on top of it like what you're taught. Like I've always identified I've always identified basically as queer because I've always been an odd person, and that's I meant it more in that sense. But I most of my interactions have been with women, but I've realized there's a few uh, I don't know what the term for non-cis women is now. Transgendered, I guess. A very attractive woman, who may or may not still have a penis. And I'm like, if she was down with me, I'd be okay with that. And I've realized it's less for me. It's less about the biology of things. I have a certain form in my mind. I like a feminine form. most feminine forms generally are cis women, but if there's one or two that isn't, it's not a big deal for me. But I don't consider myself gay or anything. I don't even consider
Mhm.
myself bisexual. I just consider myself open-minded. Some would call it queer, but but whatever. I think we it's hard to resist all of those boxes, and everyone wants to fit into a box, and it's harder for people to realize there is no boxes. There's a spectrum of what you like. There's a spectrum of your sexuality. There's a spectrum of your personality. There's a spectrum of everything is There are no boxes. And if you grew up with being only allowed a couple of emotions in a culture that largely judged this, or a generation that largely does that, it's hard to break away from that.
Yeah. Well, just a couple of comments because, like we're saying, Western men, North American, they may have in their head this ideal woman, a shape, a look. They see one on the internet, they're like, "Oh my gosh, she is so hot," and they go, "That's a dude." Like, what? No way, man. Then no, I'm not gonna have anything to do with that. Well, 2 seconds ago, you're just like falling over this one, and now your whole mind's changed. So that's my.
I think that's one of the ones it's a great example, because that's one of the kinds of material that apparently is like the most searched material. Because there are those guys that still, yeah, I do like her. I don't like. It's like their dirty little secret that they find this person attractive. They can't tell anybody, and am I gay? No, you're not. You like a feminine form.
It was. I think one of the big ones was that. Remember the band Power Station, and they had the female actress on there, Tula. Tula was born a man, but everybody, prior to was saying, "Oh my gosh, she is the hottest woman that I've seen," and then it was like a shock. That was a guy. Oh, my other comment too is I really love the title that you have for your documentary, "Touch Kink," and especially how you do that with the small letter T and then ouch kink, because kink also and BDSM has a little bit to do with some like a little bit of pain for pleasure, pain and pleasure.
That's right. Yeah, that's the thing. People also think about one sensation. Typically they're thinking about how they want to have an orgasm or have that pleasurable sensation, but they forget all the other sensations we can have.
Mhm.
And as one of the people points out in the documentary, is like the concept of a runner's high. How people push, 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 and your body just releases all these happy chemicals that make you feel amazing. And that is a direct that's kind of what a lot of professional dominatrixes do, is they'll slowly increase the dosage of pain over a long period of time, just enough that it keeps going up. Your body keeps pumping out more happy juice, and when they stop, some people will call that subspace. You feel this. I've experienced it only once, but not to the extent of others. But it feels, and I've never tried heroin, but it felt like just this wild kind of like happy thing. I imagine it's what heroin or something feels like. It's like these endogenous opioids that are swimming in your brain, and you just feel like loved and everything is beautiful. And that is really what people, it's a bit of a misconception. People think that they're into pain, or these pain sluts they call them, but it's not actually about the pain. It's about how it makes you feel,
Mhm.
if you kind of get me.
Yeah.
And that's actually a problem with the community. Some people, they don't realize that, because most people, get the whips out, do that, cause a lot of pain, and somebody says, oh, they don't know enough to know that, well, actually, the goal was actually to deliver in such a way at such point that you feel a certain way. And if it is just all pain, that's a very small percentage of people that would actually come back for more.
Well, you use a blanket term of sex, and we've heard it in the song before. Sex is a drug, and like I said, it affects your dopamine, all your nervous system, and things like that. And then for some people, it's you get to that point and you want more, or sometimes you don't get to that point. But um, all of this definitely can be healthy. Kink, BDSM, sex, love, however you want to view it. I think it's all healthy.
I think it's healthy if you do it in a healthy way, and you're
Hmm.
in an ethical way. And that's the big thing, is just to hopefully through the film it'll be both entertaining and give a little bit of a guidance for other people in terms of how to avoid some of the pitfalls and to get the most out of this thing. It's how to be ethical about this, and I do hope that there's a movement, sort of like the touch kink movement, when people are like, it's okay to do these kinds of things. We don't need the stigma. Stigma shouldn't be about an activity. It should be about someone's ethics more
Hmm.
than their activity.
Yeah, and like saying ethics, being ethical means that I know your limitations, you know mine. You know when to stop, I know when to stop, I know when to give more. It's all consensual and knowing our limitations.
Exactly.
Uh, Again, I just want to throw out there, it's touchkink.com is where people could go to. They could sign up to get more information to find out when the film's going to be released. They could see a trailer there. And by the way, the trailer is beautifully done. I mean, it's really, really great. The interviewing that you did, the shots that you have in there for the trailer, entire filmmaking is
Thank you
great.
very much.
Uh, but before we, end this out, is there a sales promotional pitch type of thing you want to give out there for your film?
Right now, I'm really just wanting to raise awareness. It's doing the film festival circuit starting soon. I have an agent that's selling it in different countries. So really, the only pitch, I guess, is come to my website, sign up for the newsletter, and keep informed about when it's going to be shown in your particular hamlet.
Uh, this may be the poor choice of words, but I'm excited to see it.
It's not the choice of words. A great choice of words.
Max, this has been wonderful, and I really am looking forward to seeing this film, and I'm definitely going to be signing up right here and waiting for the
Awesome.
information. So thank
Thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much.